officially start time. So making our way to our back with as much ease as you can offer yourself. Finding the neutrality. I'm guessing that we're struggling a little bit with audio, so let me just check in on that.
Your audio sounds good, Pat.
All right, thank you. All right, cool. Appreciate that. All right, so we'll head to our backs. And let's go knees up here. So gentle positioning of neutral spine, knees towards the ceiling, back of body just at ease. We'll pay attention to how the breath is traveling in and out of us. And then see if you can feel the musculature on the backside of the body, that subscapular tissue, the musculature that unionizes the upper and lower half of the body. So the musculature that travels over the thoracic joint, and then the musculature that supports the lumbar spine. And each inhale breath, feel that little bit of expansion into that musculature. And each exhale breath, think about relaxing specifically into the shoulders here, so that the shoulder release becomes the intention and the focus of each exhale. We're continuing our adventure through the hips this month. So we'll be hip focused with our adjustments. But in this moment, it is about relaxing into the shoulders. So arms, maybe at cactus, maybe at T, maybe down by your sides. But wherever we are, exhale breath, the sensation of release back towards the mat, into the ground, into the support beneath you. And we'll give ourselves here about 30 more seconds. As you feel right, just start to rock those knees side to side. So we give a little lateral sway to our knees. And we start to bring in some movement along that lumbar spine space. Think about moving in a way that syncs your breath so that your inhales are bringing the knees towards the midline, towards neutral, and exhales are letting the knees fall towards the left or the right. And then really pay attention to the end of the exhale and try to be fully settled into the twist capacity at the end of your exhale, so that you find the complete rotation that is available to the spine and to the hips as we start practice here. Spend just about 60 more seconds in this dynamic movement, syncing your twist with your breath. Another minute or so to find what is around, what is still available to rotate into. And when it feels right for you, let's pick a direction. We'll roll to that side and we're going to press ourselves up into seat. So we end up with our spine tall. And now I'm going to just do a real quick demonstration of the benefit of a block or a block-like structure underneath the hips. So this is kind of my easy pose here, right? Like legs are kind of compensating for the fact that I just don't have that medial line space. If I slide a block underneath me, the legs just can fully relax into the mat. So if you want to come into a space where you have something underneath your tailbone to give yourself that little bit more of hip room, feel free to do that. We're going to find our way to easy pose with the left heel closest to the body. So I'm not going to mirror here. I'm just going to do this on my side so that I stay with you guys. So left heel closest to the body. And spine gets nice and tall. Draw back through the shoulder space. Think about that same energy of relaxation that we had into the mat when we were on our back. Now just kind of broadening across the backside of the body. And start to walk your hands forward to what feels comfortable on your right hip. So with the right foot forward, our right leg will be kind of that primary focus of this space. Hands can be kickstand here. We can come down to our forearms, or if it feels right, you can come all the way down to your forehead. We just want to set what feels good so we know where we're going to work to, and then we're going to add some dynamic movement to this. So wherever we are going to inhale into a lift. So if we're in kickstand, we just take the head up, and then we exhale back into top of the head as far forward. If we're on our forearms, we inhale up, and then we exhale as far forward. If we're all the way to the floor, we inhale up as high as we can get ourselves, as further forward as we can push our head, and then we exhale back down. So whatever shape we're utilizing, we are just going to start moving our torso with the inhale up and the exhale into the sinking and reaching capacity. What this actually ends up being, it's kind of interesting. It's definitely challenging that front hip. So in this case, our right hip gets some challenge. But generally it's thoracic spine, right? Because the lumbar spine is kind of protected by where we've placed the arms, that kind of locks in that space. And then each head reach, which is not just a head drop, right? Remember, it's a head forward more than it is just a tucking the chin and curling into flexion. So think about each time you're reaching the head with the exhale, we're looking for a little bit of that expansion just above the thoracic joint. So those like 2 or 3 vertebrae above the thoracic joint just start to get a little bit of energy forward from each time we work into that fold. And we'll give ourselves about 20 more seconds of this on this side. At the bottom range or at the furthest forward range, you can engage the core, and that helps to elongate the spinal column. Maybe one more time up, one more time down. And when you feel complete, we'll walk ourselves back to a vertical spine, and we'll switch the orientation of our feet. So our right heel will come closest to our body. Our left foot will be in the front space. Remembering now that the left hip is going to kind of receive the brunt of the ask of our body. And then we walk ourselves forward into a place where the hands feel comfortable, where they can either be fully kickstand, forearms, or you can use forearm all the way to forehead to the floor. So we're just allowing the body to inhale into a lift and then exhale into an extension as to what is available for our hips and our upper back. We're using this easy pose with this dynamic movement as a way to start to warm up the openness of the hips here. We're going to find some seated expansion as we work along through today's class. Inhales into the lift and exhales into the reach of the top of the head. Not dropping, not rounding, not flexing into the spinal column, but really reaching with each exhale. And last 20 seconds here on this side. And as it feels right within you, we'll walk ourselves back up into a seat. And from the seat, if we have a prop underneath us, we'll probably want to take that out, but you may not. You may just want to shrink the depth of it a little bit. So if you're using a blanket, you could just go to kind of that shelf fold and then a hot dog style. And then we're just going to extend our legs out in front of us. So legs get long, hamstrings kind of get their first piece of activation here. So see if you can just energize those hamstrings down. And then as the hamstrings energize down, bring once again a rigidity to the spinal column and find that neutrality. And then remember that the knees can bend. We're going to take ourselves sweeping up and into forward fold. So opening up the hip space does allow for more room for that seat, right? So we can create that L shape, that staff shape, if we can get those sit bones down, and that gives us a place to fold from. But the knee bend helps us maintain more and more of that flatness, that neutral spinal alignment as we take ourselves into fold. And we'll just find a little bit of space to sink into. Think about seeping into this, and then bring your awareness to that capacity to elongate the head away from the tailbone, so that we are recreating in a way the shape we did from easy pose, where the top of our head reaches down towards the bottom of our mat. And we're just going to give ourselves 20 more seconds here. And as it feels right, we'll walk ourselves back up and into seat. Let's take the bottoms of the feet together, hug those both heels in towards our tailbone, and then clasp the hands over the toe mound. And we're gonna start in just a little gentle butterfly. Keeping the big toe mound specifically really clamped together. So using some hand strength to make that possible. And then just feeling this little gentle warm up for this medial line of our hips. And then as this flapping of the butterfly wings continues, start to tilt your torso forward. And maybe even those elbows come in front of the shins. And we're gonna stay with this little tiny flapping adjustment as we work further and further into our fold shape. You will likely experience some more sensation the deeper you get into the fold, the deeper kind of in that front hip crease, the movement of the femurs really feels within you. And as you get deeper, maybe the duration or the actual movement of the knees becomes smaller, or maybe it becomes bigger. But adjust so that you keep creating space in the fold. And then eventually, we'll walk ourselves back up into seat. Okay, so we may want to go back to that folded blanket or that block underneath our tailbone here. We're coming back to a seat. And now we're going to spend a little bit of time seated here. So get cozy and comfortable. Make sure you feel really supported. And let's take our right heel closest to our body. And we are now going to have a couple of options. So if this feels like it's enough, if we were in this shape before, right, we got into easy pose, we started to walk forward and that was plenty, stay right there. This is where we won't progress further. If you feel like you had some more room, we're gonna go to half lotus. So we'll take the left leg, and remember, I'm not mirroring this morning. So left leg up on top of the right thigh. And then we just need to be pretty protective of the ankle, right? A lot of people get into lotus and they'll have that ankle fault. So just make sure you have some awareness of the ankle. So we are either doing this from easy pose or half lotus. And we'll get our spine nice and tall first. And we're just gonna settle in to a tall, balanced breath. You can see how my body kind of wants to shift over towards the left side, towards my left side. So give yourself that little bit of core engagement so that we get some spinal alignment. And then we will give ourselves the walk forward once again. This time we're not going to be dynamic, so we're just going to settle in. So either we are doing this from easy pose, right? Settling into what's available, or we are doing this from half lotus, settling into what is available this morning. Both shapes are perfect. Don't push beyond, specifically don't push beyond what is available to your left knee, right? The left knee has an awful lot of torque put on it in this shape. So be really aware of that. If you're in easy pose and it feels like it's too little, but half lotus feels like it's too much, you can push that left shin just slightly further forward. And that actually puts a pretty significant amount of additional ask on that lateral edge of your left hip capsule. So just remember that you can make those subtle little positioning adjustments to create more room and space. I am more than aware that the sensations within this shape are pretty significant. So if it's feeling like it's too much, remember you can back out. Also remember the capacity for slowing down your breath really changes the way your body interacts. So if we take our breath into a more relaxed, deeper, slower tempo, our body releases tension and we can ease into shapes that might feel uncomfortable, might make us experience discomfort. And we're going to give ourselves 60 more seconds here. There's this office worker who works in this huge high-rise building. The entire building from floor 1 to floor 101 is owned by this office workers company. And she has been at this job for quite a long time. Long enough that she feels comfortable in the daily routine. She knows the ins and outs of the office. She understands the politics and the dynamics of the office scene. But something is changing on floor 101. There is a new CEO coming to town. And that creates some apprehension within the rest of the workforce. When it feels right, as it feels right, walk yourself back into a C. We are going to take that left leg, remember I'm not mirroring, and extend that down the mat and just bring some love, specifically some attention around the knee joint on the left side. So maybe massaging into that high calf insertion tissue, all the way from the edges to that medial line. And maybe even some attention to the low hamstring insertion. And that patella region as well, right? The top of the knee also takes pretty good amount of torque in that shape. And then when it feels right, we're gonna go to the second side. So the left heel comes closest to the tailbone. The right leg is the front side this time. And remember, you can be in this easy pose, right? Easy pose is a beautiful place to be. If it feels like there is more room, you can take that right ankle on top of our left thigh for a little half lotus. And then we get our spine to align. There we go. So we get that spinal column alignment. And if this feels like it's too much or the ankle is faulting, like mine is trying to here, you can take that right leg and just shift it slightly forward. And then we'll work ourselves into this static fold. So just what feels right within our right hip now this morning. And we breathe and we ease and we soften. So a new CEO comes in, there's always some executive change down the line, right? There's this new CEO, she brings in some of her own people. And that creates even more kind of tension within the office structure, within the corporate structure. And this office worker herself, she feels it. I mean, she kind of works right around floor 50. And the changes going on above her trickle down into impacting her life. And her level of stress starts to bubble up, starts to rise. Melting, easing, and relaxing into the openness or potentially lack of openness of that right hip. Reminding yourself about the capacity to slow things down and how that capacity interacts with your nervous system, and how by just dialing down your nervous system's response, the whole body can be at more ease. Even the areas of the body that we are asking an awful lot from. We have another 60 seconds here. One day, this office worker comes in, she takes the elevator ride up to the 50th floor. She gets out and, for what seems like no reason at all, the walls have been repainted. They used to be kind of beige office-y color. And now they're kind of this muddled green. Last 10 seconds here. And she's not sure why. She does no distaste of muddled green, but it makes her feel uneasy. When it feels right, we walk ourselves up into a vertical spinal alignment. We extend that right leg down the mat and offer, again, I'm not mirroring, but right knee a little love. At that high calf insertion, just below the kneecap, just above the kneecap at that low hamstring insertion. Just find some room, some space, some love for that tissue. Eventually, when you feel like we're reintegrated, let's send our left leg down the mat and we're going to refold. Arms sweep up. We have some more room in our hips for this fold. Exhale, take that room. Remember, the knees can bend. The hamstrings haven't even been addressed aside from that first forward fold that we brought ourselves into. So hamstrings may still be restrictive, but the hips have some more space to fold into. Let's try to find all of that. And give yourself just about 40 more seconds here. Just folding and easing and softening, remembering that the knees do very much bend, and they can bend as much as you need to, right? There is no amount of knee bend that is too much, and there is no amount of knee bend that is too little. When it feels right, let's walk ourselves back into a vertical spine and transition now to hands and knees tabletop. So finding a tabletop alignment, paying attention to how the back has responded to what we've done, paying attention to how the fluidity within the hips is responding to what we have done. Let's curl our toes underneath us and lift ourselves up into a very quick little version of down dog. Just enough to press back, to extend back. Yeah, nice, Lisa. Nice, Betsy. Shifting that weight back into the hips. And then soften back down to hands and knees, and let's come back into child's pose. The front of the hip capsule receiving the weight of our body, the compression of the torso, finding relief and release within the exhale. Give yourself just 30 more seconds here. When it feels right, let's pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. We're going to grab our either block or blanket towel. And if we're using blanket towel, we're just folding that into a block-like shape. So we have some depth that we can use underneath our tailbone in a moment. For the time being, we'll set that to the side and we will transition back into seat. And from seat, we're headed onto our backs. So we are headed down for the rest of our morning session here. Knees bent in the same way we started class here. So if you had the arms out at cactus, stay there. If you had the arms down by the side, stay there. If you had the arms out at T, stay there. And I want you to feel what's going on in the shoulders. In the same way where we started class and we had this awareness of the exhale releasing into our shoulders, think about how released the shoulders are now. How much more of the engagement of the back side of the body is happening primarily just because of what we've done with the hips, right? We took some space in those forward folds that will transition into that posterior chain length, but just opening up the hips really allows for the shoulders to be free as well. Hips and shoulders, so interrelated, so very connected. We'll give ourselves just 20 more seconds here. Just feeling the exhale, integrating the backside of the body, orienting the backside of the body with the support that's underneath it. And then when you feel right, we're going to grab our block or block-like structure and place that right at the base of the tailbone, or roughly at the base of the tailbone, somewhere where we can keep our feet as close to the tailbone as is possible, but also rest the feet on the block-like structure. And then we're headed towards wide leg, supine butterfly with the feet elevated. So I think last week we did this shape with the tailbone elevated. This week we're adding some foot lift, similar interaction with how the body responds. But with the tailbone lifted, we have an arch in the low back. With the feet lifted, we have encouraged and increased neutrality of the low back. The hips have a little bit more room to externally rotate open. And the medial line, this inner edge, is asked for a little bit more space than it would normally be. Those feet are likely a little bit closer than we'd normally set up in this shape as well, right? We tried to keep those heels as close as is possible. And that's also going to increase the sensation in this medial line, in this groin region, in the subductor musculature structure. Fluid, gentle, easy breath. This muddled green wall becomes more and more irritating throughout the day. The stress level within this office worker really continues to bubble up. At the end of the day, there is an email from the technology department that says that when all workers arrive in the morning, their computer will be replaced. New technology is coming. A lot of people in the office are excited about this. Our office worker herself just kind of has a neutral response. Last 15 seconds here. But when she shows up in the morning, not only is it a new computer, but it's a new operating system. The entire company has switched from PC to Apple. Inhale the knees up, knees towards the ceiling. As the knees come towards the ceiling, let's take that blanket or towel out, or if you're using a block, we're taking that out as well. If we're having a blanket or towel, we want that to now be in this hot dog shape. And we are going to let the left knee fall out wide, right knee stay up towards the ceiling, and then take that blanket or towel and place it on top of the left knee so that it provides just a little bit of encouragement of openness. And then slide your right leg down the mat. And as the right leg slides down the mat, engage the core so that the tailbone gets flat against the mat as well, so that there is some neutrality to the tailbone. Now, for some reason, there is a desire within our body to engage the glutes to try to create stability across the tailbone. Make sure it is core engagement that you're using. Glute engagement will actually just lift this left leg away and fight against the shape that we're headed towards. So the glute musculature is relaxed. The core musculature is semi-engaged, 15-20% max. There is balance across the tailbone. And then we are going to start to rock the entire right leg. So the toes start to peel out, but the femur goes with it. And then the toes start to come up and the toes start to go in and the femur comes in. So we're just rolling the entire leg. So there's a little quad engagement to make that possible on the right leg. The left leg is staying in this half butterfly openness. Femoral head with the tibia and fibia all the way through that calcaneus bone, the heel bone rotating on the right side, working within the hip socket capacity. So this office worker comes in, she sits down in front of this huge new shiny Mac, and she starts to discover the annoyances of the variance of the differences between the two operating systems. Right click is now a thing, and double clicks are now important, and she is beside herself as to why this has happened. It seems like this operating system change is creating an extra hour of work in her day. And she doesn't have an extra hour of work in her day. When it feels right, the right leg comes back to stillness. Feel the right side of your body really settling in. With the exhale, the shoulder settles in, the hip settles in, the glute settles in, the heel settles in. We'll take that blanket off the left knee, bring our left knee up towards the ceiling, bend the right knee so that it mirrors, and then let the right leg fall out wide. Take the blanket over on top of the medial edge of the right thigh. Settle in. Find your core engagement so that the tailbone is balanced. And then once you feel balanced, we extend that left leg down the mat. Left leg extends, right side of the body relaxes. And we can start that rotation of the left femur, tibia, fibia, all the way through, not just the calcaneus bone in the foot, all of those smaller bone structures. Feeling what's going on in that left hip socket as we rotate though. So this office worker's stress now is just bubbling and bubbling and bubbling up. Every time she tries to use one of her old shortcuts, it no longer works. And every time she kind of gazes up, she sees that muddled green wall and she just sees change that she doesn't want and doesn't need. As the stress rises, she starts to think, like, this is too much. I'm either going to quit this job or have a breakdown or something, but something is happening within me that I dislike very much. When it feels right, as it feels right, bring some stillness back to that left side. Bend the left knee. You can take the blanket off the right knee and bring the right knee up to mirror the left, and then hug both thighs in towards the rib cage. Give yourself a little squeeze here by drawing the shoulder blades back. Not bicep energy, but subscapular energy back into the mat. And then release the feet back down. Push into the bottoms of the feet. Let yourself lift the tailbone into a bridge of your choice. A little reset for the front of the hips. And then at the top of your bridge, so that could be a 1-inch bridge, it could be less than a 1-inch bridge, but at the top of your bridge, think about hugging the hips back into the hip socket. So there is a little glute squeeze here. It's like a glute squeeze, and then maybe just the slightest amount of quad squeeze, hugging the femoral head into the hip socket. And then keep that squeeze turned on as you release the tailbone back down to the mat. Taking your left ankle across your right thigh, we're headed towards my favorite version of twist. So the bottom of the left foot is going to come down on the right side of the mat. The top of the left knee is going to point towards the ceiling. And we get this full rotation of the spine. But we're also using this as a big, deep settling into our hip space here. So feel that lateral edge awareness. Release into the left shoulder. You can even turn your gaze towards the left if that feels right within you. So this office worker goes to her boss and she says, I want to take my vacation days. I want to exercise the option for vacation days. And the boss says, okay, like when, let's get it on the schedule. And she says, right now, I want to walk out of this building right now. I want to start it. Boss kind of chuckles a little bit and then realizes she's very serious. And her boss really appreciates her. So they figure it out. They work it out so that she can take a 10-day block off and away from work. She's doing this knowing full well that there's the potential when she attempts to come back, her job may not be there. Right? It is never great to not be seen when so many changes are happening in the office. Settling into that lateral edge sensation around the IT band on the left side of the body. And we have just about 40 more seconds here. She goes home that afternoon. She jumps on her computer at home and she feels some sense of ease of using the Windows operating system once again. She starts looking for a retreat, a yoga retreat to deal with stress. She finds one that she likes. It's in this little jungle space of this tropical region of the world. She hops on a plane the next day and she is at this retreat center. Last 5 seconds here on this side. And as it feels right, we come back across midline, left foot comes down, give yourself that re-energizing into bridge. Hug the femoral heads back into the hip socket. So there's some gentle glute engagement, some gentle quad engagement that's trying to suck the femurs up towards the tailbone. And then keep that as you release the tailbone back down to the mat. And then our right ankle will cross over our left thigh. Bottom of the right foot comes down to the mat. The right knee points up towards the ceiling. That energy is kind of from the lateral edge engagement. Then the right shoulder relaxes in. And we just settle into this space, into this twist. The very first day, she meets with this yogi who asks, why she decided to come. She explains that there were changes happening in her work life that she just wasn't ready for, couldn't handle. And she needed to get away. The yogi listens and says, okay, your first task here will be to go into the jungle and catch a praying mantis. And this woman's not exactly scared of insects, but she's not really thrilled of this task. The praying mantis here, she's told, are big. They're 4 to 5 inches. And they have the potential to bite you in a painful way. But she paid for the retreat. She's not going to go away on the first day. So she goes into the jungle and she starts looking for a praying mantis. As luck would have it, one of the very first spots she looks into, she sees this massive praying mantis. It's 5 inches. It's green with those big, huge, beady eyes and that capacity to rotate its head. And it's just looking at her. It is very clearly looking at her. She takes out this net that they've given her, swoops it down over the bush, and boom, she has captured a praying mantis. She brings that back to the yogi. And he says, okay, great. I want you to take this praying mantis and release it in your room. She is kind of like chuckling, thinking it's a joke, and he's very serious. It's very clear he's serious. When it feels right, as it feels right, let's bring this right leg back across our body one last time. The feet come down to the mat. We push into the mat, lift our tailbone into this bridge where we can hug the femoral head deeper into the hip socket, glute and quad engagement helping us do that. And then the tailbone gently, sweetly, and delicately releases down to the mat. As the tailbone settles into the mat, start to rock the knees side to side. This can be a 1-inch movement. This can be a full rotation. This is up to you. Listen to what your body needs, though. Don't just go through the habit of what you typically fall into. Offer what your body needs. Offer what your body wants here. Yeah, nice skip. And When you feel right, when you feel balanced left to right, bring the knees back to neutral, let the eyes close and go on that little internal adventure. What does your body need here? And then offer whatever your body wants before we head into Shavasana. So this office worker, now a yoga retreat attendee, takes this praying mantis back to her room, opens the jar she's put it in, and it crawls out. And within about a minute, she's lost sight of it completely, right? It is scurried under the bed and then it is just gone. And that makes her uneasy for sure. But the reality is she doesn't see this praying mantis again. And she goes through the next 5 days of the yoga retreat. And she has a really good time. She does a lot of yoga. It's February, so it's Hip Awareness Month. So they do a lot of hip work. When you feel ready, as you feel ready, just release yourself into Shavasana. Release yourself into a space where you feel great, where you feel comfy. So the retreat wraps up. They go through this final ceremony. And the yogi asks anyone if they have any questions. She walks up to the yogi and she says, hey, I had a great time. This was an amazing experience. I appreciate this. I feel more relaxed. But why did you make me catch that praying mantis and release it in my room? And the yogi says, come with me. And with that, just completely let go into the shape that will be your Shavasana. So this yogi says, follow me. And they go to this woman's room. He opens the door and he says, look around. Does this look like the jungle to you? She's very confused by the question. She says, no, this is my room. And he says, okay. And he points up to this little ledge where the praying mantis is sitting with this huge cricket in its mouth. He points at the praying mantis and he says, this room looked like the space that you caught the praying mantis. She again says, no, that I caught the praying mantis in the jungle. And the yogi says, yes. Even an insect has the ability to adapt. Start to bring some movement to your fingers and your toes. Your wrists and your ankles. Elbows, knees, shoulders, hips, neck and head. He continues, he says, wherever you drop an insect, don't worry about the surroundings. They just do their best to thrive. And you should do the same. When it feels right for you, as it feels right for you, we transition from where we are back into a seat. From the seated space, our spine gets tall, our eyes close, and our breath becomes fluid. When it feels right for you, we'll inhale our hands together at heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you be consciously aware that we are living in a world where the rules bend and change and shift? But can you also consciously and constantly remind yourself that you have more than enough capacity to change? And see how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Sunday, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Love you guys so much. I am coming to Chandler next Monday to teach class, and I would love to see you. I have rented out a room, and we now have a bigger room at Tumbleweed Recreation Center. So the Monday night class is happening live and in person at 7 o'clock, 7 to 8. I will be there probably around 6:15-ish if you want to come and hang out. And then I'm hanging out afterwards to do some tea. So I would love so much to see you on the 21st. But if not, I will love to see you anytime I get to. Appreciate and love you guys. Mwah.
Happy birthday, Patrick.
Thank you so much. Have amazing days. I love you guys.
Love you.
Yeah.